It's often been said that presentation is everything. Well, if that's true, then just imagine how important offering constructive feedback is for that presentation. Hello, and welcome to our process on the importance of giving effective speech evaluations. My name is Bob Turel, and after joining Toastmasters, I remember being impressed by the fact that whatever our role was, speaker or leader, we would have the opportunity to improve through feedback. Toastmasters value feedback from their first day in a club environment, and that club environment is a place we can get and give specific and constructive feedback on any presentation. This DVD is all about the importance of effective feedback and what we can do to make sure it is effective. In our time together, you'll see what techniques can make the evaluation most effective. You will also see an actual workshop on the subject that contains questions and answers from experienced Toastmasters. And finally, you will be offered suggestions on how to create and then deliver the most effective evaluation consistently. All right, let's begin with the workshop. This was a 50-minute session at District 47's Spring Officers Training in Tampa, Florida. Now I have a very important question, even with all the stuff that's in the back. Who had breakfast this morning? Did it look like this? No. No, of course not. Just you wish? Well, I know it's extravagant. I know it's a large-size sandwich. I know it's way over the top when it comes to, well, let's just say any time of the day. But I wanted to make an impact on you because I want you to come away today with the feeling that you can do an evaluation in 3 parts that's going to be effective, it's going to be on target, and most of all, it's going to be something that's actually going to help you. It isn't just for your speaker, although that's first. This will be a technique that will help you become a better speaker. So with that in mind, let's go forward. You've been given all the technical details about standing up when you're asking questions, and we'll wait for that pause. But please feel free throughout to raise your hand, ask questions, make comments, because this is a workshop. It isn't just going to be someone preaching at you. And hopefully at some point I'll be able to show you at least an adequate example of how to do an effective evaluation sandwich. Let's go to page 1 in your handout. And if you don't have one, just signify, please, so Jeff can get you a handout. Please write in this, do anything you want in this, keep it, and there are some good forms for you to take away. The 3 things that I want to give you today, plus anything else you'd like, are these. They're bulleted down at the bottom of the page. The importance of preparation. Now think about that for a minute. Although it may seem like an oxymoron, I just got in the meeting. So-and-so's not here, and now I have to be an evaluator. How can I prepare? It may seem strange, but I'm going to give you techniques that will help you be as prepared as you can be, even when you just know about it from the beginning of the meeting. The second bullet should be true in your life no matter what we're talking about. If you tell someone you love them, you better sound like you love them. So let's face it, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So when someone says be caring, be sensitive, be in tune with your speaker, you need to do that. I'm pretty sure that's clear to everyone, but I want to highlight that today. And since I have 3 bullets on this page, and I'm going to do this every once in a while with my fingers, 3 is truly a magic number. It truly is, and that's really the heart of, if you think about the basic elemental sandwich, it basically has 3 parts. So I want to instill that in you so that when you think about giving an evaluation, you really have the technique down for 3 solid parts. And there will be a 3-part approach to evaluations. Now let's go to the next page and we'll talk a little bit about what look like fill-ins at first, but let's do this verbally. Let's get you to get a chance to speak your mind, speak your opinion, and if you do have a question, we can get that for you, get that answered for you as well. Toastmasters International recommends things from time to time. So the 3 lines you see there represent 3 things, here we go again with the magic number 3, that you ought to do to be effective every time you evaluate. Now, I'm going to ask you to give your opinion about what one of those things are. If you give me something that isn't the answer based on Toastmasters International's you ought to do this, I'll ask you to write it in the margin somewhere, out in the white space. If you get one of those that are the 3 elemental or the 3 most critical, I'll ask you to put that on the line. All right, so everything's good about evaluations. Everything you say is going to be helpful, but there are 3 that may make the difference between an effective evaluation and one that just kind of comes out. So go ahead. Who would like to start? If you don't mind standing up, Jeff will bring the microphone over here. This gentleman in the blue shirt. Tell us one thing you think everyone should do or ought to do when they do an evaluation?
I would say insightful feedback.
Insightful feedback. All right. So let me just clarify now. Insightful means you want to give something a little bit more in depth. You don't just want to do a whitewash and give some platitudes like that. Put that in the white space. Insightful feedback is very important. You know, some people say honesty. You got to be able to be honest. You got to tell them what you think in a nice way. Remember point number 2 on the previous page. Who else? This gentleman in the dark blue shirt?
I think that, remember, when you're giving a speech, whether it's a C, C, or bronze, they all have objectives. And did they adhere to achieving the objectives of the speech?
Okay. Thank you for that one. That's one of the winners. Put down, read the objectives page in the project manual. I know it's a lot of words. I'll repeat them. Read the objectives page in the project manual. Now, know that. I mean, I have an evaluation form for this seminar. As I look at this gentleman seated up front, it's on the left side of his notebook. You want to know, well, what's this person supposed to accomplish? Not to mention, if you talk with her before her speech, what are you trying to get? What else are you trying to do besides what the speech asks you for? So make sure you do that. Now, if you're going to read that one single page, because it always is, that's a hint. What else do you think you ought to do? Go ahead. You want to come up? Yeah, you got to almost have to be in the middle of the floor all the time.
I would think you have to listen to understand the speech to where you could provide that effective evaluation.
All right. So that's listen carefully. Listen. We'll put that in the white space because sure enough, you want to observe. That's not just using these things on the side of your head. It's your eyes, your senses, everything about you that says, how did you affect me? How did you do? How did you present your speech? So I'm going to give you the hint that I just spoke about. If you're reading the objectives page, you ought to read the entire project. Think about that. But it's 4 pages long. I understand it's 4 pages long. However, you ought to read the entire project that she's working on. Now, think about that. I mentioned the fact that I just got in the meeting. How the heck am I ever going to read the whole project before the time I get to do the evaluation? Why don't you go back to your clubs and make this recommendation? Why don't you say, General Evaluator for the next week or whoever your next meeting is, why don't you make the matchups a week ahead of time? Then I can call you, say, hi, this is Bob T. Melody, I hear you're doing, well, no, you tell me, what speech project are you doing? This way, I not only can establish a rapport with her, she can tell me, by the way, I want to watch my mobility, I want to watch my, whatever it is. I build that in and I come prepared. There's that word, prepared. And some people say, well, a week ahead, that's a long, yeah, it's a long time if you think about it that way, but really what it is preparing and getting that person to be reminded you're doing a speech. I'm with you. I'm going to be there on your side. But more importantly, back to your point, when I listen, I'll be listening for those things you gave me. So I say to you, just as a suggestion, you might want to go back and talk with your executive committee on that. The third thing is just what I said. If Melody's going to be my target speaker, I say call her, call him ahead of time. 2 days, 3 days. Hi, this is Bob T. I'm going to be your evaluator, blah, blah, blah. We get to talk. You get to tell me. I even get to know what project you're working on. Because that's the problem sometimes. You walk into the room and you say, well, okay. Do you have your book, by the way? I forgot it. Then what do you do? So while we're off on that little side track, here's what I'm going to make another suggestion. Why not go back to your club, and I know we're talking about bucks here, why not recommend that they start to invest in building a library of all the manuals? I'm not saying you're right in them, but if Melly walks in and I say, you don't have your book, I can go to the library, get the book out, so to speak, wherever you keep those files, and at least I have the objectives. And then I can write off on a side page. Bucks, it's going to cost, but the point is a club needs and wants to invest in those things because those are the things that will help all the members, not to mention specifically the evaluator. So it's all these little contingencies. What if she doesn't have the manual? What if you can contact people ahead of time? You can get to the point where all the other things you talk about, as well as the 3 we just wrote on those lines, are the essence of your evaluation technique. And I guarantee you they will improve what you do and ultimately improve what your target speaker really wants to improve. Questions on that? I see a smile. I see a giggle.
I'm sorry. I missed 2 of these objectives.
Okay,
you said
that's
you
okay.
wrote.
It's good
I
to
was
recap.
writing in the sidelines.
That's all
I
right.
only got 1.
It's good to recap. Let me start with the one, this may not be the first on everyone else's, but the first one I have is read the speech project. In other words, read the whole project. Read the evaluation page or guide, just like that. There's always a one-pager. Read it, and if they let you highlight it, understand what the essence of what they're asking them to do. And then and the third really should be first is talk to the speaker ahead of time. You know, you could say, okay, Melody, right, yeah, everybody's going to start the meeting right now, but that doesn't give you a lot of time. Why not do it 2 days ahead? You're all prepped. You're ready to fly. All right, let's move on to the next page now. These are, oh, I'm sorry, Melody, go ahead.
I have a question. One of the things I find out is when evaluators evaluating someone, they don't get to the point.
Okay.
That's one of the problems that some of the evaluators don't do, is get to the point.
Okay.
They spend 2-3 minutes of it, but they did not get to the point of where I need to improve my speaking.
All right.
What do you suggest?
All right, not getting to the point is probably one of the easiest things for a beginning evaluator to do, because especially if you're not prepared. In other words, they're almost starting to comment on the stories that you told, content of the speech, and they're really going off on their own tangents. One of the things I'm going to help you with today when I'm showing you the forms and the technique I use, it's going to almost require you to discipline yourself, to write things down so that you're focused, targeted on technique, not content. It's not to say it's illegal to speak on someone's content. There can be reasons for it. What the story did to me, how you transitioned, how it left me with an impact or something like that. But most of the time we're talking about a technique. If I'm doing something with one of these and it gets in the way of the speech, you want to be able to tell me that. But you want to make sure your notes in terms of preparation when you're getting up there are such that you're able to stay focused and then stay on task, because that really is a problem, and it can be. Thank you for that question. Let's see if I can answer that as we go along.
And just so I'm clear,
Sure.
I have your stand. Just so I'm clear, I was going to see if you can go over those 3 lines before we go to the next page.
Okay, one more time. Read the speech project. That means the project, and hopefully you do that ahead of time. So if you don't have the same manual, let's say, I'll use Melody's name again. Say she's using advanced storytelling, and you don't have that manual. Now what do? What can you do if you don't have the manual? You can't sit there at home and make up something. You can't make believe. So the best you can do is remind Melody, okay, make sure you bring your manual, you know, when you come to the meeting. Because this way you're going to be able to say, as soon as I can grab it, at the beginning of that meeting, then I'm going to start at least Evelyn Wood's reading it. You might not be able to spend all day reading it, but you do the best you can to get it ahead of time. Now, if she doesn't have the manual, once again, you go back to the library technique if you can get it. But if you happen to have it at home, think about it. You can prepare yourself by looking over that project. You can actually read the whole project ahead of time. Concentrate, just as I gesture toward that page in your book, on the evaluation page. That's the essence of her targets. Back to Melody's point. I think you were going toward the one particular point. However, when I got a little bit lost and blah, 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 then you can stay focused. You can stay targeted, as you mentioned, and not veer off that. And the third thing, of course, is talk to the speaker. And I've mentioned that all along. If it's Melody and I'm speaking with her, I'm doing this ahead of time, hopefully ahead of time. All right? So those are the 3 lines. And everything else you want to add, honesty, insightfulness, sensitivity, all that's good, because all that's important. Remember, I don't care if you're new or you're experienced. We all want this feeling. I want to feel like I'm supported. I want to feel like I want to come back. I did my icebreaker. Don't beat me over the head with it. And we all know that feeling when you do the icebreaker. Let's look at the next page. Now, this page has fill-ins again. And I just want to discuss quickly with your opinions. When you do, we'll just ask you to stand up and give your opinion so that Jeff can hold the microphone up. How you say it. The first one says, speak for yourself and avoid impersonal statements. Now, why doesn't someone just stand up and tell us your opinion of what does speaking for yourself and avoiding impersonal statements mean? Or what do you think it means? Any volunteers?
Okay, the question was speak for yourself.
And avoid impersonal statements.
Speak for yourself. I would think that would be honesty. To me, when you being an evaluator, you have to give your honest opinion on that person. Even though there may be a conflict with that individual person, you're going to be, as an evaluator, speaking honesty. And no impersonal statements, meaning well, you know, I think you should not have wore that blouse that day, or I don't think you should have had pink fingernail polish. That, to me, would be impersonal. That's irrelevant to what I'm up here doing. So that's what I think it would be.
All right, thank you. That's true in both cases. All right, the lady in No Name, what does that say? No Name Pub?
No name pub, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think of it as saying I instead of we or you.
Yeah.
Say, we think that this should have been slower or faster or something, but I should say, I felt
Right.
that the pace needed to be
There you go.
different.
That's what you need to mark down on your pages. I believe it affected me this way. You know, when I got lost, when I got confused, all this I stuff, I. Because Melody just spoke. I'm sorry I didn't ask you. I haven't been asking names. What's your first name?
Susan.
Susan just spoke. Susan gets to speak for Susan, not Melody, not Steve, not Ken. So truly, there are people that stand up and go, you know, the champions don't do that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? We're not with the champions right now. We're the champion of our own cause. So speak from Susan's perspective. That's Susan. You want to feel something different, you feel something, that's your privilege. Impersonal statements sound just like that. We all, I heard, they don't, it's not you. Substitute judgment words with those that describe your reactions. Now, I almost gave you a hint. Susan did too. Who wants to take a whack at this? Tell us what judgment words would be and how to avoid them, or different ways to describe your reactions. Anybody want to take a chance? All right, I'll take a chance. Did you have your hand up? Go ahead. Let Jeff just hold the microphone for you.
Basically, I think it's avoiding a personal perspective. If you happen to not like, it's similar to what Melody had said, if you don't like something about the perspective, that's irrelevant, really. It's about how they presented it and what they felt about it, and don't put your personal opinions into your evaluation.
All right, thank you for that. That certainly plays in. Avoid your personal opinions about something personal about another person. However, what I want you to get for the essence of this is avoid judgmental words. Good speakers don't do that. Really? And what are you, the great authority? You have a staff, you just came down from the mountaintop? The point is, you don't get to say that kind of stuff. Well, you do. I've heard people say it. What Susan gave you was, I was impressed. I mean, if you want to just use slang, I was blown away. Whatever you want to say, but it's all about what you feel, not what they shouldn't do, you should avoid. Because once again, we start getting into that, and I don't know if anyone's ever used that phrase at you. Anyone ever tell you what you should do? Yeah, don't you hate it when Toastmasters fly in and should all over you? It's not right. It makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes them like they're the authority. Yeah. When really what you want them to say is, I know you're good, and I know you're my evaluator, but tell me how you felt about what I did. And I mean did, not just said. Because we can all get into the content, but really what I want to try to say is, Melody, you brought your point home with your body, with your eyes, the way you, that's the point. You're bringing your instrument to bring your message, and that's really what you want to try to do. So judgment words are things like, don't do this, they say never do that, leave that out and give them, just as Susan pointed out, your impression. Now the last one ought to be self-evident. What do you what happens to you when someone repeats a point? What do you feel like? Dun, dun, dun. You know, it's like, I got you the first time. I got two of these, I heard you, you know, the whole thing. You want to say, you have to repeat it? And trust me, there's some people that just get so nervous, that's all they have left. They just say, and one more time, that thing you did with the, don't do one more time. That's just not the way to go. If you made your point, once again, I'll get back to your point, Melody, if you have your notes right, you will have made your point the first time around. And you will do it by looking in their eyes, just like you do in a speech, making your point. Because if you have to repeat it, you're either running out of steam or you're just rude. I guess you didn't hear me the first time. Go ahead, we have a comment?
I guess like when you're wrapping up, you know, I usually like to say, in summary, you know, you're saying don't say, well, in summary, no. I liked what that was. Just say in summary, good job. Don't avoid talking about those topics. Like when I close up, I usually just say in closing, in summary. When you get to that stage, I mean, you just be very brief, good job, and just let it go.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm going to teach you a way today to avoid ever closing with, you know, overall it was a great speech and I really enjoyed it. Who cares? I want to just say, that's all you got left at the end of the line? I want you to end with, if you start with 2 of these, then I'm going to ask you to end with at least 1 or maybe 2. That's how the sandwich is going to come into play. This is leading up to it. I want to make sure you understand the principles behind speaking to someone when you're giving constructive feedback. There's another C word that if I were you, I'd ask you drop it from your life's vocabulary. If I say, I'm going to give you some constructive criticism, the last word you hear and the most feeling you have, yeah, he's not going to criticize me. Who's he think he is? Constructive feedback. Not a microphone, not speakers. I'm going to give you some feedback. And that can incorporate positive improvements and more positives. Please, if you do one thing in your life, I don't care if you're a boss and you're giving performance feedback, use the feedback word. But I'm so glad you did that, because now we get to the next page and now we start talking about the sandwich. And I want to go one step beyond the sandwich, because I've actually been violating something that I want to teach you to do. If you look at that page, for the most part, the biggest thing on it is a picture of me. My hands are writing something on a separate piece of paper. If you look in the upper left-hand corner of that picture, you'll see a project manual. Plain and simple, you don't have to try to read it. Just know that it's a traditional Toastmasters manual. Now, as I write something on a separate piece of paper, here's what I'm doing. There are 3 parts to the paper. Here we go with the 3s. Top part says positives, middle says improvements, and I bring back the positives at the bottom. Bring back, I actually make another space for it. So here's what I do. Think about a project manual. Think about the size, the type font size on this page alone. Most of us don't write much bigger than that. So we're standing here in the corner, we say General Evaluator Steve, fellow Toastmasters and guests, and we end up, in some cases, doing this. And then I can't read what I wrote. Oh, God. So the whole point is, if you look carefully at that picture, I'm actually writing larger than I did in the book. I'm using a Sharpie, by the way. Everyone, I'm sure, knows what that is. And I'm making bullets. Bullets mean I can't do the whole paragraph. Therefore, I can't stand here and say, and another thing about your story was, because you're going to end up reading a paragraph. Put a bullet down, and you can stand back here, there, wherever, see the bullet, and you get to do this. You get to speak the way you would naturally, the way you feel comfortably, and more, let's face it, openly to your own speaker, as opposed to doing what you're doing right now. Holding that thing in front of you, which means something's in front of you, something basically is blocking your communication. Don't you want to practice being the speaker you're always going to be anyway? Why not put it down? Most clubs have either the end of the table, a lectern, something where they can put something down and you can stand there and just say, okay, point 1, the fact that you had an introduction that made us just all gasp, that was amazing. And I want to do that with my hand. I want to do that so he feels when I'm talking about that opening, it blasted me. Can you do that when you're holding your little book? No. In fact, that's what I'm saying. All along I've been doing this in the workshop and kind of holding it and trying to hold it down. We'll see when I eventually look at the tape that Ken is making. But the point is, if I needed it, I'd have to hold it the whole time. I'm trying to get you to the point where you write bullets, as you see in that picture, put them down, and then guess what happens over a while? You start to not need any notes. I know that may seem strange, but if you go to a contest, and that one's coming up this summer, later fall, you will find the champions never use notes when they get up on the stage. Never. They write them, Sergeant at Arms takes them, and then when he goes to give them back, nah, that's okay, I got it. I got it right here, and it's going to filter through here and come out here. Sounds strange, but that's my technique to say, if you take it from let the book go, write on a separate piece of paper, bullets, just a few, then you'll have a prompt that you won't have to hold, but you'll be able to give. Sounds strange in the beginning, because most people are like, I can't, not me, I'm getting a good old man, I want to make sure I read that. But we're going to get back to your point. If you have your hands free and you've done the tripartition, you will then not be stuck with, in summary, let me recap. No, you'll have other points. By the way, what's your first name? Alex. Alex. You'll have other points, Alex, down at the bottom, if you want to call it the bottom or the end, and you're able to finish up with what sounds like a closing, but really is also additional positives. Because if all you're going to do is recap, it's not that way. I mean, you said it already. Didn't we say we don't want to repeat a point? Then don't. What you're seeing me do is take from here, transpose, split them up, and then put the stuff in the middle to make a sandwich. 2 pieces of bread, stuff in the middle. Sounds simple. It isn't when you first start because you have to kind of go, well, this is more work, and I understand it is. But it makes you better. Otherwise, I couldn't recommend it. I'd have to say that to you. All right, so let's have some questions on this. Anyone have a question on what you're seeing on that page? Mostly the hand and the transposition of the notes. Go ahead, Melody.
Okay, I'm looking at the picture that you got here.
Mm-hmm.
I see the manual and I see the big piece of paper.
Right.
Now, do we still recite the things on the manual? Would it be better to recite the things on the manual as well as the positive things?
I would do this. Here's something a lot of people don't read in the manual. The manual says if you're going to write things in their book, they're going to eventually read the book, correct? So the book says, the project manual says, in addition to this, give your verbal. So here's what I'm saying. Look at the essence of what you wrote in the book and don't repeat it. Add something to it. Put some more value into your whole evaluation. Because if all you're going to do is regurgitate, then you might as well just give them the book and you don't need to do a verbal evaluation. What I'm saying is add something. There's always room for you to interpret how the things you wrote are going to be conveyed to your speaker. So I'm not just saying write larger of the same things you put there, but look at what you wrote and try to, how do I want to say this? Try to create almost a speech based on what you wrote. That's really what you're doing in your notes. You're trying to make a sequence of how you're going to convey your points. And yes, sure enough, Melody, you're gonna draw upon what's written there, but you just don't want to regurgitate it. You just don't want to repeat it. It gives you a chance to say, you know, your opening was this good. It just had me mesmerized for about 20 seconds. I almost couldn't get past it, and I almost couldn't get back to the rest of your speech. You want to be able to add something to what's in that book. And a lot of times you can't write all that. And you certainly can't show it when you're speaking to someone with a lot of energy. So it might come clear when I show you the example. That's one of the things I want to do with the video, and Mercedes going to help me with that. Look at that blue box, though. I want to just touch on that. How many improvements should you offer? Anyone want to take a chance at?
I would say 5.
Okay.
You will think about the introduction, the way they prepare the speech,
Okay.
and when you evaluate, go in the conclusion, and depending on the gesture, how the person proposed themselves, and so far.
So you break it down by almost categories of speaking style. Okay. Everyone has their own stroke if they want it. I'm going to just make a recommendation. This is just Bob T speaking. As I saw Susan do this, kind of like curl a little 1 up. I think 1 is good if you're an icebreaker. Now remember, icebreakers want a hug. It doesn't mean a whitewash. It means a hug. But mostly you could hug someone and say, and by the way, you need to change your shoes, whatever. You want to leave an icebreaker with a nice feeling. Come on back. Really, come on back. And the one thing where you were gripping the lectern real hard, we all do that. We all do that. You'll get, in fact, here's a way to break it. Just turn your body a little bit. Your hands will go with it. The point is you're real sensitive with an icebreaker. 1 little old 1. That's why it's good you did that. 1 little old 1. But other than that, I'm going to differ from your perspective. I'm going to say 2, at the most 3. The most, I mean even in a contest. 2, maybe 3. Because if you watch the way I give 1, and I'm not saying you have to do the same, I make a mini, this is back to your point, Alex, it makes a mini speech around the point. So I don't want to be one of these, bullet number 2, Melody, you need to do this. Bullet number 3, I don't want, if I'm going to do that, I just leave the thing down, read it later, I want to feel like I'm speaking with you, not to, not at. So that's why I say the number of points you might want to gauge by the speaker's experience, and if you don't know it, a safe bet is always 2. A couple of 1, 2, like that. Because if you really take 1, and that's why I was kind of giggling along with you, Susan, it becomes a, yeah, I'm comfortable with this 1, because I really want to explore it with you. Where's the harm in that? There shouldn't be. Other questions about this? Oh, wait, we didn't finish the blue box. Should you comment on speaking skills beyond the point of the project? Ooh, yeah, there's a gentleman in the back.
Yes, I believe so. I think that you should be also concentrating on some of the lessons that were learned from the previous projects. So if body language or something like that was one of the previous projects, think that should be incorporated into the speech that was being made at the time if that project was already completed.
But you wouldn't go beyond it, would you?
Not beyond, correct.
Okay. So that's the point. Bring previous, that's okay. And that's part of, once again, back to Melody's point, what I was making too before, is you want to add some stuff in. You know, in the previous speeches, I've seen you do this. You can add that into your notes. However, I wouldn't go beyond. I wouldn't say, you know, you really need to pump up your vocal volume. I understand vocal volume can be critical, but you got to be careful how you say it if the speech is not going toward vocal variety or it's not asking her to do certain things in that regard. So be careful of judging someone, so to speak, giving feedback on something that's beyond her required objectives. If she does it, it's beyond the required objectives, and she does it, applaud it. Give her credit for that. But just don't judge improvement center-wise on something that she really wasn't asked to do yet, because some people do that. They say, well, you know, you should kind of come up to that. Go ahead, Melody.
So let me recap what you're saying. If, say, one of my members do the first icebreaker, but they use their vocal variety, should I not say that in my evaluation?
Oh, yeah.
You did vocal variety, but that's in chapter 5, and
right.
that's good. Should I do that?
I say applaud the heck out of it, because that's really what you're saying is, you know, you're already exhibiting some advanced techniques. However, if she was in speech number 3 or project number 3 and you commented on something that really was asked in 5 or 6, then it might make the person feel like, well, I was concentrating on this, you know, gestures or whatever it was. So you want to be careful to keep your comments from the past up to the point and then applaud anything that went beyond. That's a good sign. Go ahead.
Are the speeches, the evaluations only for the speaker, or is it presented to the rest of it? Because what happens in our club is the speaker will stand up and the communication is between the evaluator and the speaker. And what about the rest of us?
Yeah, good question. There have been a lot of people that say 2 ways. They make the speaker stand up, which to me is very uncomfortable. They understand like this, going, okay, yeah, all right. Can't let me sit down and drink my coffee, please. You can still talk to me. And the point is, just as I'm trying to do in this workshop, you asked the question. My main comments are coming back to you, but it doesn't stop me from looking at you. It doesn't stop me from answering to the main audience. So here's what I'm going to say. It's my opinion only. I say speak to her, your target speaker, most of the time. And then if you want to say, but wasn't it great? Did you see the way she worked the stage? Wasn't it? I mean, it's like saying, we're applauding you even though I'm kind of applauding you specifically. But the main part, I speak right to my target speaker. Because just like we're doing now, I want you to know how I feel through these. And trust me, I'd never say, stand there like this, or like this, or like that. I mean, after a while, it's nerve-wracking. I can't imagine clubs that do that. But many do. And they say, oh, no. In fact, one person made me do it in a contest. Can you imagine that? A target, they made me get up. You have to stand up. I went, okay, whatever you say, pal. It was crazy. I felt crazy. But I'm just suggesting, talk to her most of the time. Bring the audience in when you want to make a major applause. And don't, once again, go back to your club and say, can we revisit this? Can we think of something different than making the person stand up? That's tough. Any other questions before I show you the example on the screen on the back? Someone in the back?
I guess just briefly, I'm a CC.
Okay.
And, you know, one of the issues I always thought that was important, and this is sort of an objective of everyone, is timing. Now, if someone's, you know, 10 seconds over, I've seen situations where people like 3 or 4 minutes over. Do you have any thoughts on timing? Because in my experience, timing is very important. It helps you in your editing process. All right, I don't have time to get to that. I get to the point. If you're dealing with complex issues, you need to condense them. It's very good preparation. You have to give a professional speech. Do you have any thoughts on
When you're the
evaluating
speaker
timing?
concerning timing?
When you're an evaluator, the issue of timing, evaluating timing, any thoughts on that?
One of the things I do, Alex, I always say to people that if they went really gone over time, is I try to say, even though I felt involved in your speech, and I really enjoyed it, there were times that I felt the point was being made a little bit long, or maybe I was kind of having to hang on, feeling like I was hanging on to the point. And later on, you're going to hear something about the timing. I mean, they may or may not know about the timing at that point. I just recommend, I think, that if you get a chance to practice more, you can get more of a honing of your timing. You can actually get that down to a science. It is not easy. I know it's not, and especially in the beginning, but the best you can offer a person is to say, the timing factor is going to be important. You'll get to that if you just allow yourself more practice with people at home if you can. Let's see what this technique looks like in an actual club environment. First, a portion of the target speech, followed by the evaluation using the sandwich method.
It was all about taking control of her life. So Debbie Fields, a young mother with no business experience, opened her first cookie store in Palo Alto, California in 1977. They told her she was crazy. No business could survive just selling cookies. Headstrong determination, a dynamic personality, and a sincere concern for people. With that kind of commitment, no wonder she has products like no other, deeply satisfying people's personal indulgences that consumers just can't get enough of. There is a recipe for success. Now, it's kind of hard to determine really what success is because every single one of you has your own idea. For some, it's all about the Benjamins, baby. It's about money. For others, it's about success, power, respect. But for most people, it's about truly living the life that you've always wanted to. But I'm here to tell you there is a recipe for success. I call it the 3 Ds. First is desire. It's about living your passion. What is it that you want to do every day? Could you find what your calling is? The second D is drive. Now, some people might think of this as motivation. What gets you out of bed every day, right? Now, that drive could also be the money part, could be that social status. Now, the third D, this one's going to be hard. It's called determination. Every single one of us has to be able to stick with it in order to reach that end result. Now, I've shared with you Debbie Fields. She had the right recipe, right? Of course she did. She's a worldwide celebrity. Now, I want you guys to know that you guys can achieve your goals and dreams. You now have the recipe for success.
It's all about the Benjamins, baby. Or maybe it's not. And maybe it's not because of the great expectations that you give us when we look at your famous formula now, the recipe for success. Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and of course, our Cookie Monster Supreme. You know, I'm not sure you could have picked a better lead-in for your speech, Recipes for Success. I really felt that since the project asked you to pick a subject that's important to your audience, you picked one that obviously is deliciously important to your audience. I love the fact that when you speak, Jason, every time you do, but certainly tonight, especially in this sort of arena type setup, you come right at us and come right to us and then bring us in, right in to the essence of your subject matter. You work this stage area, the speaking area well. You give us all the energy, enthusiasm you have. And that's another thing the project calls for. It asks you to be enthusiastic, to use body language, to use all the things that you've progressed to this point, to make your point and to give us, once again, that recipe for success. I love the analogy, the consistent analogy back to Mrs. Fields, now a famous person, certainly a business mogul in her own right over the years. And I love the fact that you tied that to what we'll call the recipe for success. Where I got a little bit distracted was the back and forth at times. It sounded like you were talking about her, or I was looking for something a little bit more in depth, and then you'd go to what you called the 3 Ds. Now the 3 Ds were really the premise you were offering us, and I love that part because it really is an offering to all of us, a template you might say, that we can use in our own recipes for success. I just would have liked a little bit more development of Mrs. Fields and how she used the 3 Ds. That kind of would have appealed to me a little bit more. What I did like, though, was how you take your energy, how you take your use of humor, your storytelling, and you bring all that together to give us a point, to give us something that we can take away. Let's face it, an audience that's going to listen to someone speak about a recipe certainly wants that recipe, even if it's something that's just in their mind. So when you use eye contact, when you use body language, it's intense, it's with us, it's all the way with us, and you just literally grab us to bring us in. So I love that fact. I love the fact that you gave us your heart and soul, and of course, as you pointed out, this subject was near and dear to your heart, but nevertheless, it's not only important to you, it tasted well for us, and it's something that I look forward to using when I think of how I can make success with your recipe. And now we'll see another example of a Toastmaster giving an effective evaluation using some of the techniques in the sandwich method.
I'd like to tell you tonight that I am thankful to get this award for all the failures I've had. This award says YO, stands for You're Outstanding. But I didn't get this until I failed many times. Starting off early in my life, I had some little struggles to deal with. And I'd climb up the hills and slide down. Like a sand pile, climb up the hills, slide down. I learned from my failures how to get over that hill by going quickly over. Got over that hill. In the future, I had bigger challenges ahead of me. And I'd climb up the hill, climbing, climbing, climbing. My fingers would get blistered, bloody. My arms would get bloody, crawling. My fingers would almost break, and I'd fall down. Tried it again, went up, went up, went up, and I fell down, broke my fingers and toes. But I learned from these things. I learned how to find the right footholds, how to find the right grasps, to find the right places. If I didn't fail the first couple of times, I may not have made it ever. That's the way things went in my life. And the biggest challenge I came across, it took me a long time to get to the top of the hill, and I turned around, looked back, and I saw that first little hill that was so small, that was so insignificant, and all the other hills that I tried climbing that I learned from, I now used in my future. As a computer programmer, that's how you do most of your programming, is you try something, if it doesn't work, you try something else. That's why the cost of computer software is so expensive, is because there is a lot of trial and error, because you're trying to put something physical out of your mental picture of what it should be, and sometimes you can't make that conversion. The other day, then, I've been running a mastermind group for a bunch of business owners for the last 14 months. These are business owners that are struggling, they can't make the ends meet, some of them have failed, some of them had dropped out because they failed. And one of the women came up to me last night and said, because of you, because you taught me how to fail and learn from my mistakes, I am now turning away business. I have so much, and she's in the construction field. She is turning away business because she has so much, because she knows what she wants to do, she learned from the past lessons, and now she even charges extra if she knows one of her customers was going to be a pain. That's because she learned from her mistakes, I learned from my mistakes, and I was able to convert them over to her. So thank you again for this award. From my mistakes, I learned how to achieve and become successful.
Tom, thank you very much for your speech this evening, for being willing to be vulnerable,
for sharing with us the fact that success comes through many failures. It's a lesson that all of us, I think, can learn and relearn. I'd just like to share with the group the purpose of your speech. And it's from the Advanced Manual, Special Occasion Speeches. And the purpose of the project was to speak to accept an award with dignity, grace, and sincerity, to be able to acknowledge those who have helped you, and to recognize the importance and work of the presenting organization. I'd like to begin with some of what I thought was very evident of how you've advanced as a Toastmaster. I enjoyed the setup with Michael, our Toastmaster, because you made it a little bit more real, what exactly was happening, that you were going to be accepting an award for some of your Toastmaster accomplishments. I loved the opening, the beginning. Right from the start, you said that instead of being successful, you said, I failed. And that resonates with the audience immediately because we think you're going to talk about all of your accomplishments, but yet you talked about vulnerability. You had a great use of gestures. They're very much more natural than when I first heard you speak. You gave us a word picture in your conversation with us. You said you walked around the hill, and I thought that was very pertinent and very obvious. Then you also talked about a story. You talked about a lady, and she said to you, because of you, my life is different. That was very powerful. And you were out in front of the group, not afraid to be behind the lectern, not using notes. Again, very effective. One of the things that I sometimes like to do in evaluating is look at what other speakers have said about a speaker. And with respect to the advanced manual that you're working on, what was said by some of your fellow Toastmasters was, there's evidence of Tom's development as a Toastmaster. Dick Cooper said that when you were speaking in praise, you reminded me of my father. And Diane said, you may want to practice a little bit more soft voice. I think you had a little bit more soft voice than you've sometimes demonstrated, but I think that's still a good suggestion to work on. What Dick Cooper is saying to us is that you're able to connect with an audience, and I think you're able to do that much more effectively than when you first started as a Toastmaster. So congratulations on your anniversary. Some of the things that I thought perhaps maybe could have worked a little bit better is in terms of expressing gratitude to the organization. I thought I would have heard a little bit more about Suncoast Toastmasters. The title of your speech, Accomplishments, I thought could have been a little bit more powerful. Maybe something I might suggest would be turning mountains into hills, which is something what you were really talking about. But I like the fact that you talked about the hills being smaller, because that's so true in many things that we tackle in life, whether it's Toastmasters or regardless of what type of challenges we have, when we face them, we find out that we're often much more effective than if we just ignore them, or as you said, to go around them. And I thought that you were not afraid to be vulnerable. What I would have liked a little bit more were some of the details of those failures, and maybe some of the accomplishments of how those childhood experiences turned into a very effective presenter and effective Toastmaster that you have become. It was a powerful speech. It led us all to think a little bit more about what each of us have accomplished coming every Tuesday to this particular club. Thank you.
So what's your take on it? We'll let anybody go ahead and just open it up for opinions.
I was impressed at the end. This gets back to my issue that instead of finishing with in closing, in summary, that you were able to positively and humorously incorporate, try and find a theme in the speech in a positive, even humorous way. And I think that's a great concept to use instead of just saying, in closing, in summary. So that I like that.
Okay, good. Because I was hoping about that point. That was one of the things you brought up. And I thought, well, at least I saved, if you want to call it saved, or I partitioned some of the other positive comments for last, for the end. And you probably can tell there were different ways to cut things out. I cut out the part, probably was not the nicest thing to say, but I said something about, he said, it was deliciously, remember when he wrote this? And I said something like, I know this subject was close to your heart, and I turned it around, I said, well, actually it's a little south of there. And my wife saw it and went, take that out, that's not nice. You're not going to say that. Okay, so it's not south of there. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering what your comment is on, I noticed the guy, and again, this is one of my things about, he kept saying now. I mean, do you bring that up or not? I think that I'm hearing what you're saying about just one or two things, but I think personally, I want somebody to let me know if I'm doing something like now, or if I'm nervously rubbing my eye, or I want somebody to tell me that. And if you're telling me I can only do really two kind of feedbacks, then that's not going to cover some of that other little stuff that I think we need to know about.
I remember this in terms of your point about, well, I do have 5 or 6 things I'd like to bring up. There's nothing that stops you from speaking with her, him, after the meeting. And there's a lot of room there for, you know, I just want to bring something up about rubbing your eyebrow, wiping the sweat, whatever you want to call it. I'm just saying that for the main evaluation, if you give too many points, you'll end up sounding bulletized. And another thing, Fred, and another thing. And then third point, you start sounding like you're giving me a litany of or a menu choice when I'd rather hear something that blends it, like, I got confused, you started talking about her, then you brought her up again. To me, that's all around the mulberry bush in some ways. However, it's not this, let me give you now, because there's some people that do this, they go, and now for the improvements. It just sounds like you're going to a different section of your speech. Can't you blend it? In fact, can't you transition right to the part that you want to get to? Because if you make your notes like I'm suggesting on that piece of paper, you can almost place your last positive in section 1 so that you go right into the first improvement for the middle section. It almost sounds like a transition in a speech. Is it a speech? That's another argument. Some people say, oh, it's an evaluation. I say every time you speak, it's a speech. Go ahead, Jim.
I know that you talked about content and context, but a lot of time when I do an evaluation, I try to put in some sort of relationship between myself and the actual person who's doing the speech for a number of reasons. One, primarily, is that if you say something, it probably won't be taken in the wrong context or the wrong way if you have that ground, that foundation between you and the evaluator. And a second reason is that you have people coming into the thing that may be new or guests, and they're not familiar with some things and they don't know who and what. It's always good to have that foundation between you and the speaker, so when you say something, everyone in the room gets it.
Agreed.
So I just wanted to point that out.
Very good point. Thanks for introducing that. Did you? Yeah, she was second, I think. Or no, somebody else? No? Yeah.
One thing that we do in our club is we give out love notes to everybody, and we get feedbacks so I always like that.
That's
when
great.
I'm speaking, I'm getting additional feedback. So to his point, I'm also getting feedback on little things. Oh, I'm not moving, I'm just standing still.
Right.
So things like that are covered in that. So I kind of like that.
That's a good point. There's additional feedback coming in.
And I believe the young lady here probably recapped my question.
Okay.
Just to piggyback on hers, I was going to see if you would suggest those love notes as she put them, or comments, if you will. I would think that would be an opportunity for growth, or instead of pulling them to the side after the meeting, you know, you don't really have to put them on the spot or if they have somewhere to go or something like that.
Exactly. I agree. It's a sensitive thing, and you want to make sure you handle it with, as you say, the love notes. And if you really felt strongly about, well, this has to be explained, then do it in private. You know, I say after the meeting, it doesn't have to be when everyone's gathering and doing a little socializing, but do it in a way, even in a phone call or something, that says, can I talk with you a little bit more about some other points I had that maybe I didn't get to? I'm just suggesting that in this context, 1 or 2 can really take up your time. On that note, I'm just going to break back to the handout before we have to wrap up. I want to show you if it's, I think it's page, well, you have double-sided handout, so I'm not sure of the page. But look for something that says a generalized template at the top. Here's a point way early on when I said, what if Melody forgot her book? What if we don't have that little library I was talking about? Use this. This is generalized. It's got way more stuff than you're probably even going to need, but think about it. Think about it. There's a lot of good stuff on here that you can at least say, well, if we don't have any manual, I can at least give you a generalized speech feedback. In fact, I've used this for contests. When you really want to say, I don't have anything else, use something like this. Make a copy of it. If you want a PowerPoint slide copy of it, I can send that to you. My email's in the back. You not only have love notes coming from everyone else in the club, which I think is a great thing, back to your point about saying, hey, it's private, I can read them when I want, I save them. But how about love notes, and this is a big one, if you'll flip to the next page, a big love note for the evaluator. I just asked you to evaluate me in some ways. And boy, do I feel loved. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing with the word love. But the point I'm trying to make is you can evaluate. First time I did this, they were shocked. Oh, what is that? Where did you get that from? Who are you to evaluate the evaluator? But the point is, anybody can comment on how the we do that in Toastmasters. So this is an actual form. It's a little bit bigger than the one they come out with in Toastmasters, but it has the same ingredients on it. You can actually say to someone, you know, I really loved your evaluation. You're really on point. You talked about projects. You had eye contact, spoke with her. It's all good because you're giving feedback to the person who's giving feedback. And what does it take? Just a couple of notes, really. It doesn't have to be a big thing. What some general evaluators forget is it's their job. It's part of their job to say, Melody, let me give you a little feedback about your evaluation. Not 3 minutes, but a little bit of feedback. That's part of the GE's role. Go ahead.
We incorporate all that actually into our meetings for every meeting. We have these forms given to everyone. We don't necessarily, I guess if you want to call them love notes, it's part of our meeting. Sure. Not only is the general evaluator evaluating, everyone has feedback, and we make copies for everybody with an agenda. We distribute an email at least 3 days before to identify who the speakers are and who the evaluators are so that they can connect if they want and if they need coaching.
Great. That's
so it works well.
That's simply ideal. That's a great template to follow. Ahead of time, ahead of the game. You're using all your potential to give a person the best feedback. Yeah, thank you. I will say thank you for your participation this morning. You guys were great. You were wonderful to work with, and I hope I get a chance to do it again. Thanks again. As you think of how you can implement this system, remember to begin with the basics we discussed in the video. First, talk to your target speaker before the speech is presented. Next, read the project in the manual. And last, read and highlight the speech project's objectives page. Keep the following guidelines in mind. Always speak for yourself. Avoid judgment words, and avoid repeating a point. And perhaps the most important item in offering a balanced scorecard is to make the proverbial sandwich. Take a separate piece of paper and create 3 sections on it. First, for positive comments, part 1, then an improvement section, and then another positive section at the bottom, part 2. Print only large prompts from the notes you took in the speaker's project manual so you can see the notes from a few feet away. This will reduce your reliance on notes and allow you to speak more from your memory. It will also allow you to use more eye contact, gestures, and mobility as you deliver the evaluation. The advantage here is that you have more specific contact with your speaker and you are training yourself to use less notes, which plays right in with how you want to present your speech projects in the future. What I hope you have gained from this training is how to give a balanced 3-part evaluation, connect with your intended audience in a more engaging way, and develop your own efforts in becoming a better presenter. If you would like a copy of the handout we used in the workshop or want to give me some feedback, you can contact me through the email information on the screen. I wish you success in your future evaluations, and don't forget, make your sandwich taste good and still offer your speaker something to chew on. Evaluations. They let us know how we're received and help us grow as speakers.